Hello and welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast, hosted by Daryl Dittmer, where we talk about the fight or fights that so many of us engage in this lifetime, as well as ways to potentially relieve ourselves of those fights. Let's get started. Welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast. My name is Daryl Dittmer. Today, I'm joined by Nicole Danielle, and I'm going to have to read all of this because there's a lot here, and actually, it's very, very cool. So, Nicole Danielle, a seasoned TV film producer with credits on networks such as Discovery, A&E, and the Food Network. The co-founder and visionary of Amazing Crazy Productions, focused on creating inspiring content and hopes to make a positive impact on the lives of others. Love that. Nicole is the mom of 2 young children with autism and is not only an advocate, but a champion for authentic voices. Her self-discovery memoir, Diamonds Beneath the Darkness, is the first book in Nicole's Life Through Lyrics series, which chronicles Nicole's personal journey to become. Nicole, welcome. So wonderful to have you here. I know our journeys have kind of, been a little parallel for a while, which we'll talk about, but so glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Daryl, has anyone gotten this emotional this early on? Because you got me with that intro. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. Well, it's all really cool, true, wonderful stuff. And I feel very fortunate to have you on. We sort of came together on our book journeys, right? Which I think is just such a cool thing. And you and I both had the opportunity to experience each other's writing, which is really, really cool. And we'll talk about that. But for me, and maybe you feel the same way, I didn't think, 2 years ago I was going to be an author. And here I am. And in similar situation for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me. I mean, first of all, like our paths did cross, but it hits me so deeply because it's exactly what I wrote in like the intro of my book. It's like I felt such a connection with you from the moment our paths crossed due to the way we published our books. But like it's just again proof that like what I know about your life and your story and your book, like I try to tell people all the time, it's like our stories are never going to be the same, but we're all so much more connected than we know we are. And it's not until you find the strength and the courage to share your stories with the world that you begin to understand that. And it's such a beautiful journey once you do. But no, I didn't. I did not think that this would ever actually happen. To circle back to your question of published author, it hit me the other day. I had like an author event at this iconic little bookstore that's greatly loved in Denver, Colorado, called Tattered Cover. And it was my first event where like they actually announced me kind of like you just did. And it was this whole Q&A, but it just really hit me like leading up to that moment. Like when I was a kid, I don't know if you have the same experience. It's like you read these books and you think of authors as like otherworldly people. Like that's how I think of scientists or astronauts. Like, I mean, I'm a big dreamer, but I could have never imagined being someone that did that in my life. And I always wrote stories and I always wrote poems and I was in movies and I was always more alive living in the clouds than I ever was down in reality. Like it was just way more beautiful up in the imaginative world. Like, we teach kids all the time to dream big and wander. But I never thought of it as an actual reality. And even during the pandemic, not to go too far ahead, but when I had like this massive panic attack that really like was kind of my breaking point that shook me up and I started writing my stories, I just kept writing and writing and writing. I mean, this book took me 3.5 years from the time I started writing it to the time I clicked published. And if I didn't get my own head out of my ass, I'll toss to your book and push ego away and get out of my own way and just said there's more people out there that need this versus my own fears stopping me from doing this. I don't know if I ever would have actually gotten to have the title published author next to my name. I mean, it has been such a journey in itself. So that's a long-winded answer back to your question. But no, it's just a beautiful journey to get there.
It is. And thank you for sharing that. I love the journey. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned, everybody's journey is a little bit different, and we a guy told me in business a long time ago, and it just kind of resonated with me because it was so freaking funny. But he said, sometimes you just got to open your kimono. And I feel like
Oh,
that's kind of what, right? Like that's kind of what
great.
happened with the whole author thing and saying, here's my story and here's my journey and here's how it hurt and here's how I sucked and here's how I tried to get better and all those kinds of things. It's so powerful because, and not for the sake of it, right? It's
No.
powerful because we have an opportunity to have people relate to us and be able to, say, hey, I understand that because I've felt that or I've been there or, all those kinds of things, which I think that's the power. And that's the power behind being authors and how I looked at it was, I have two sons and these are guys that I wanted to like, hey, when I'm gone someday and you pick this up and you read it back in 2023, but you read it again in 2035 and something else pings and something helps you at that point in your life. That's, to me, that is what it's about. That's right. Like that is
Yeah.
that's the lasting nature of being an author.
Well, and yeah, that's, you hit it on the head. It's like, I think you come to some point in your life, whenever that point is, that you start to think about legacy, which is not something you think about in your 20s, right? At least where we grew up, both of us in the Midwest, that was not something that I was taught.
No.
But yeah, especially for me, it was a combination of legacy. It was a combination of, for too long, producing really crappy television that I was not proud of. I mean, there are things that I've done in that world and created scenes because I'm a good producer that never existed, but I made you believe that they did. Like one time, my husband, actually, I was pregnant with my first son, walked into my office and in the middle of the night saw me banging my head against the wall because it was just that much. And I also, I just got to a point that I was like, I want to do work that my kids are going to be proud of, not waste my time on things that aren't important or I'm not proud of or they wouldn't be proud of. But especially having two young children with special needs, they both have autism, and my 7-year-old son is actually nonverbal. I just kind of got to a point that's like a two-parter where it's like, if I sit here and fight every day, because I'll never let the world, shove them into a box or limit them because they check a box. Why am I limiting myself? And the second part is, if the world, because it's not always the kindest or most accepting as of today, right? If the world never chooses to accept my children for who they are or limits them because of their special needs that they have, at least I can say I did everything in my power to build something for them, and not in an entitled way, not a silver spoon way, but just knowing that, like, it was time for me to rise up and start to build something of my own so that I built a legacy for them, that we can all be proud of, and I can say that I did that for them.
So cool.
Sorry to
Yeah.
get emotional. I love
That's
my heart and
wonderful,
soul with
Nicole.
kids.
No, please. I
Yeah.
mean, whatever, if that's a wonderful thing, that to me, that signifies so much meaning and so much depth with what you're doing and the emotion that you've put into it and all of yourself that you've put into it, which is just such a cool thing. I'll say one real quick thing about legacy, and then we'll get into your story if that's okay. But
Sure.
so I was, my journey was sort of interesting, and I got to a point where I wanted to have some success in life that I didn't have. I didn't experience growing up. I wanted to make a little money. I wanted to do things. I wanted to experience things. And so I did those things and I did business and, and had some success, and it was great. It was difficult. It was crazy. It was, many times it just sucked because I wasn't, like you said, I wasn't building something that was from here. I was building something that was, the world liked to see, but it's not something that felt great to me,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was told by an owner in one of the companies that I had worked with. He said, Daryl, this company is going to be part of your legacy. And I swear my stomach just soured when I heard that. I was like, no, that's not going to be my legacy. That's not going to be what I'm remembered for or known for or anything like that. And not too long thereafter, and I was an owner in that company, and not too long thereafter, I decided I needed to go. I needed to move on to something else, because of that. That was a little bit of a catalyst for me, because I needed my legacy, or wanted my legacy to, whatever my legacy was, I didn't want it to be that. And anyway, so
No, but good for you, because honestly, I talk about the noise a lot, and I'm not trying to jump ahead or anything, but like that that those words get in your head, and either you let them consume you forever and you stay stuck. I think stuck is one of the worst positions in life you could ever be in. So you just stay stuck because someone told you that this is what this is for your life, not that you chose that for your life, but you chose to do the hard thing, which was the best thing for you, and to break free from that narrative, because you were like, no, like I know self in here, and I know I'm destined for something different in my lifetime.
mm,
And that's like super admirable, because that's, trust me, for someone who's let the noise for decades control my own self, like now I'm at the point where I can recognize that and be like, well, no, I applaud you, because you didn't listen to the noise.
thank you. No, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And my life has become something where either it resonates for me or it doesn't, and I go in the direction of where it resonates, and I'm repelled by the places that it doesn't resonate. And it doesn't necessarily, that doesn't mean feels good, because some things resonate that don't necessarily feel good, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's sort of rounding out the picture of our lives and how we experience our lives, by that, what feels like the right thing. And we have to train ourselves over time, like, okay, I'm going to go in the direction of the stuff that resonates, and I can't go in the direction of things that don't anymore. I just can't. There's limited time to experience this existence, right, in terms of
Uh,
on this planet. So
yeah.
so I'm, I can't spend my time doing some of that crazy stuff. So I know we've we've jumped in. I bet we could
I
talk
want
for
to ask
five
you questions right
for,
now.
for
I'm
five
so
hours,
fascinated.
but so I wanted to get to Nicole's story,
Mm.
and talk about your story, and however, wherever you want to leave off, wherever you want to jump in. It doesn't have to take us to today, but how did that roll out for you, if you would, please?
My gosh. Well, first of all, I think I'm insane most days for making this a 3-part self-discovery memoir series. Who does that? Like, honestly, I probably should have stopped with book one. But for me, as someone who, you've been through this journey in life, and a healing journey, and a journey back to self and back to the light, I did it because I wanted people to truly understand what the journey is like. Because I think there's a lot of people that are too scared and won't ever take that journey in their lifetime. And while it's extremely hard, it's extremely beautiful. Healing is a very powerful thing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question, Daryl. My life. I guess if I'm gonna put it in terms of my memoir, my book, and why I wrote it. The book really, Diamonds Beneath the Darkness, is about not everything in my life, but pieces that really got me to the absolute darkest point in my life. Where I wouldn't say it's as dark as people think it is, but sometimes you get to a point where you feel like you're completely losing yourself. But when you're also so in touch with yourself, you know that the hope and the light is still there. It's just needing to sometimes break free from the storm. And whether that's the storm of the situations around you in life, or the storm in your own mind, or, the world can be hard and it can be heavy. And so for me, this was book one. For me, has been the awakening of bringing these hard things to the surface and finally talking about them for the first time in my life. Because Ever since I was a child, I was told I didn't have a voice, or what I had to say didn't matter. And with a crown on my head as a pageant queen at 10 years old, and in courts chambers, legally changing my last name for my protection because I was told to be ashamed of my Italian roots and for my safety, to completely hate that part of my identity and change that part of myself. I was also met with since the day I was born, you come from a long line of strong, independent women backpack. So here, take it all for the generations and carry it all, but don't talk about it. Shut up, sit there and look pretty. And so that's a heavy weight to carry from the beginning of your life. And then we move towards bullying because of those choices, and then discovering theater and finding myself by playing somebody else, and constantly learning how to wear a mask and a pain and smile for the world to see. So just, hide it, mask it, just keep going. You're fine. And first love's gone array, and other people deciding things for my life. So I just kept signing the dotted line by what people told me. And it's like, don't dream so big, don't shine so bright, because how dare you make other people have to look at the reality of their own life. So it became slowly, like, in my early years, life just chipping away at me. People that are supposed to protect you and love you chipping away at me. You get to a point where it's like the world starts to say, okay, we'll stop dreaming so big. Like, let's get back down to reality. And I think we can all feel that, and making decisions for our life that are not true to our heart and ourself. And so it just kept evolving until, like, even with, then there's the underlying issues of, like, being told by my own mother that I was nothing more than a dime a dozen, or, being told I was too curvy at 120 pounds to play this, or by my extremely emotionally abusive ex that I loved deeply, that I was never enough. I was never going to be anything more than what I was, which was beneath him. And I was I don't know, are we allowed to swear on this podcast? A not nice word. And just constantly people just chipping away. And then it became, mistakes. And I do want to know what your meaning of a mistake is. Remind me to circle back to that. But I opened up very honestly in this book about one thing that led to, spending the night in jail, and then the way I met my husband, and then, like, all of these things. And then I opened up very honestly about miscarriages that I went through, and I lost 2 children along the way, to my 2 miracles that I did have, and had to cut my mother out of my life for my own safety and health and my own livelihood as a mom, but having never seen my father since I was 12 years old. And then 27 years later, I get a phone call that he was found dead. It's just a lot of heavy stuff. This is not a life book. A lot of people, I had an editor, tell me in the writing of the editing portion before this book went, there was a piece that got so dark that she was like, Nicole, this is really dark and you need to give people some hope. And my response to her was, if you're uncomfortable reading my book, that means I did a really good job of writing it. And sometimes life gets really dark. And if you're in it, like, you can't always see the hope. You can't feel that, even though it's there. And so for me, the most challenging thing, and I know I'm jumping all over the place right now, but for me, the hardest part about writing this book for me was not writing the book. It was the way in which I chose to write the narrative of my book. And so while that same editor questioned, like, why couldn't you ever go to therapy? Do you have some sort of stigma around it? She didn't understand the underlying message that I was saying throughout the whole thing, that since I was a child, I was told I didn't have a voice. So I never thought I could speak about any of these things. So I just carried it and carried it and carried it and carried it and carried it. And so that writing this book in itself was the most therapeutic thing I could have ever done, just to, like, be like, here it is. Like, it's off my chest, it's out into the world. But it's the way in which I wrote it, which was extremely hard. And so I wrote it from a narrative of, I put myself mentally and physically back in all of these versions of myself, with all of this stuff that I never knew at the time was trauma, because I never thought the word trauma could be connected to my stories in life. But, so all these pieces and parts of myself, I wrote it from a very deeply personal narrative, as if you're reading it as I was living it. And I think that's why a lot of people connect with it and say it's like reading a friend's diary, because it's just so raw and it's so real and it's so vulnerable. It's like, literally, like, I joke, like, rip open my heart and soul, and it's all over these pages. I didn't want to just say, here's my story, I lived through this. I wanted readers to feel what it felt like to go through these experiences in my life. And so it kind of then gets to a point I think the pandemic did a number on a lot of people. And I started to see people coming to me and talking about things in life that they were struggling with. And I was like, you're not alone in this. I understand this. Like, I'm not living, but you're not alone. And it got to a point, and towards the most turning point part of the book, where I had a massive panic attack during the pandemic, like literally fell to the floor, stabbing feelings through the lower left part of my right shoulder blade. Like, it felt like everything from 4 decades of my life just surfaced and hit me in one big wave at once. And I was like, I would say that was one of my like awakening moments, where I was like, I like, in the book I kind of describe it as, I think I said, like, I'm not Alice falling down the rabbit hole going to Wonderland. I'm Nicole crawling out of the rabbit hole and awakening to the reality of my life. And it was a lot. And it was like, especially after I got the call that my biological father was found dead, that day I wrote the first story in the book. And then from there, it just started all flooding. Everything just started flooding. I just found, not healing, like I say, awakening and acknowledging of all of this stuff through beginning to start to write the stories. But I also did something very different with the book. I'll say I could not have found the strength to write this book the way I did if it weren't for my son, Crosby. I dedicate it to him. The simple dedication is, for Crosby, thank you for helping me find my voice. Having a son, growing up and being told your whole life you don't have a voice, or what you have to say doesn't matter, and being silenced and convinced to believe who you are, someone you're not. Having a child who is nonverbal at that point, when I had that panic attack, felt like life was giving me permission slip to finally speak, because I couldn't carry it anymore, and I couldn't exist knowing other people were suffering and their stories that they didn't talk about, because I felt so alone in all of these pieces of my story. All of it. I didn't talk about any of it. I mean, it's not postpartum depression. All eyes are on the baby. Nobody's looking at mom. And it's a really serious thing, you know? Excuse me. And so it was because of him that I finally found the strength to speak. And then, because of him, I did something very different with the book. So while this first part is called Diamonds Beneath the Darkness. God, you got me going good, Daryl. Sorry.
You're good.
And the entire book series in itself is called Life Through Lyrics. So because he's nonverbal, the way we communicate, and I'm deeply connected to my son, beyond verbal words, is with music. Like, he will find this way to just like find a video and share it with us. And it helps let us know like what he's feeling. And so because of that, I named the series Life Through Lyrics. And so every single subchapter in the book, there's 122 of them, is appropriately titled after a song that connects and resonates with those pieces of my stories I share. But my huge twist is, because you never know what kind of a song someone is thinking about, I give readers access to my personal playlist. That's the storyteller, producer, and me. If they want to play the music in the background, they can play the music as they read and take the journey of my life. And it's why I haven't done the audiobook yet, because I can't get through it without crying.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's a very long roundabout circling through it. I'll answer, but it's hard to say what are the parts of your stories when it's really so much. And I think that's why you understand when we're questioned as self-published authors going through the process to be like, well, who's your avatar? Who's this book for? I constantly was challenged with it, because I'm like, well, no, I just had 3 men at a Barnes and Noble event come up to me because they overheard me talking about it and bought my book, because they were like, I'm going through this, I'm going through depression, I'm going through divorce, and this is like, man, I needed this. And this is from a Barnes and Noble that said, don't expect to really sell any, because memoir is not our thing. And we sold out of all the books. So it just shows how powerful our stories are, you know? But when you're like, who's your avatar? It's just like, well, I just wanted to be like anybody who needs this, like anybody who needs a reminder that we're all here having our human experiences. And like, I like to say, like what they say, like you're an expert if you're, 10% more than somebody else on a journey, right? And whatever journey is, it's like, yeah, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a TV producer, I'm all these things, but really I'm an expert at being human and admitting what it feels like to go through these things. And like, you're not alone, so let's talk about it. And so, yeah, I just wanted, when I answered that question about the avatar, it's like, I didn't want to pigeonhole one thing. I wanted this to be a book that like anyone who needs to find this book will find it when they least expect it. It's just, I believe that in life. I believe that's how we met. I believe that there's just always a bigger working plan that we don't see at the time. And you come across these things at times in life when you don't need it, but you need it the most, you know? And I wanted to write that book for people because I wish a book like this had come across my life over the past 10 decades when I went through these things. So
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. That's really
yeah.
powerful. And thank you for sharing that. It's, you
Yeah.
know, the entire story is what you needed to get out, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that is just the cool thing. And sometimes we don't know it. You know, I didn't know that I needed to just dump all this stuff out.
Yeah.
And then I did, and I was like, holy crap. Like
Well,
there's stuff in here I don't remember. Like that you know, just sort of floods in and you're like, oh my Lord, wow. You know,
yeah,
so
you start to open up these pieces of yourself, but like, and I know this will connect with you too. I don't want to, I try really hard not to judge anybody or anybody's life because especially having kids with special needs, I don't want people to judge our life. Like you don't know what another person's going through. But I know as far as being on this earth as many years as I have, a lot of people oof, just we self-medicate. We put band-aids over the emotional wounds, we pop pills, we numb out constantly just to escape life. And then you sit there doing that and judging people that are willing to rip off those band-aids, open up the wounds, pour all the things on it, and begin to heal from it. And this for me was that ripping off the band-aids and starting to pour the things on the wounds to be able to like bring the bubbling to of the depths of that those scars and those pains like to the surface to say you're never going to properly heal in life if you don't admit what you've been through. Open up those gates, like you say, like all these things flooded in, you started remembering, and take the journey towards actually healing your life. No amount of pills, no amount of booze, no amount of anything. No, everyone has their thing to escape life. You know, some people have trashy television and junk food. Like everyone's whatever that is, but it's always just hiding. It's always just masking the pain because you're too afraid to like feel the realness of it all. You know.
right. Yeah, that's you know, my story is one of, you know, abuse of drugs and alcohol and then sobriety. And but the interesting part of it is I needed to get rid of the drugs and alcohol to experience life. There was no way for me
Mm-hmm.
to experience life without getting rid of those things that numb me out. And so you know, the whole avatar thing, I'm not a rule following dude. I'm just not.
So
You know, somebody will say, oh, what's your avatar? I'll be like, what are you talking about? You know, what is my avatar? You know, I feel like I can help people with getting sober, maybe getting clean, maybe getting to the point where they want to change from that perspective. But it's not even so much that, because in my opinion, you know, our journeys are very different,
mm-hmm.
but they converge on life. They converge
Mm-hmm.
on having a different life, right? Changing things up, being different, feeling differently, all of those sorts of things. And that's you know where I that's where the rubber hits the road for both of us. It's life. It's not if it's
Mm-hmm.
not all the problems back there. It's okay, what are we going to do now? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the message we're trying to impart.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I don't want to spoiler alert too much for, like I said, crazily book two on this journey, but I'm really coming to understand, man, how much generational trauma is a thing and affects us all. And for me, like the healing work I'm doing, I'm like, you can't tell me that, you know, I was told my whole life I didn't have a voice. I found out my paternal grandfather lost his voice and couldn't speak when he was dying towards the end of his life. And it's like, carry this all for all the women who never wanted to do the work to heal it. So here I am carrying it, carrying it, carrying it, carrying it. And life gives me a nonverbal child. Like nobody on this earth at this point can tell me that that's not all connected in some way.
Mm,
And I got to a point where I just had to realize, and then the children carry it for all of us, whether we realize it or not. So here I am thinking I'm protecting my children. This is never going to touch them. They're never going to feel what this feels like to like have your mother be hurtful and say those things. You have to cut her and have your father abandon you, be told that, you know, be ashamed of your dark brown eyes. I hated my eyes my entire life because they were my Italian eyes, right? And hide my name and hide this big part of myself. And I had this huge breakthrough moment on my healing journey a couple of weeks ago when this big thing happened. And we don't have time to talk about that, but it was just like, well, no wonder I never understood self-love, because since I was a child, by other parts of myself, I was told to hate such a big part of myself, right? But I've just gotten to a point where it's like, if that narrative I was made to convince was true, that I come from this long line of strong, independent women, guess what? Narrative, I'm the last female in that lineage on my side. I had 2 sons. So I had this empowering moment of it was just like, well, it has to end with me. So I guess I'll be the one to finally step up and do all the work to heal it for everybody, because my kids deserve a much more beautiful life than the one I had to live. But it does challenge me too, because especially going back to your stuff, like I do constantly, especially in this messy middle, feel like I'm always in survival mode. Like I'm fighting for my voice. I'm fighting to share my story. I'm fighting for other people. I'm fighting to get back to my version of self that I know was my authentic me when the world couldn't touch me. And I was that bright light. I'm constantly fighting every day I show up. I'm fighting for my sons. I'm fighting to fight with people who think my child doesn't have a voice or has anything to say because they don't understand the way he communicates. But the truth is, he has a voice and he has something to say. It's just fighting to help change the perspective of other people. And so talking to somebody who literally wrote a book about not fighting anymore, right? I constantly, and I'm taking boxing because boxing to me is my way of channeling all of this. I know we could say fight is different terminologies, but like I find myself questioning from the place of the messy middle. Gosh, what would it feel like to just throw my hands up and say, I surrender? I know the universe has my back. I don't have to fight so hard. But I don't know anything any different because I'm just constantly fighting. Like the darkness of the world, I guess, the noise, all of it, you know. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's where it's just like, I did want to ask you that because I was like, what does that feel like to truly stop fighting? Like maybe I did stop doing that by getting my ego out of the way and being like, click publish because there's a greater purpose, you know. But I don't know, some days just get kind of tiring too when you're like, well, I'm human, right? And it's a lot to fight every single day for something bigger than just what the world wants you to be, you know.
Yeah, I think, no, that's
I'm
huge
a
stuff.
complicated person. I think
No,
deeply.
it's gigantic stuff, and it's powerful and it's meaningful, and that my story of, and I'll keep this as brief as I can, but I was told by a mentor of mine, a long time ago, as I was wrestling and fighting and, trying to change things and, trying to just make things be different and holding on for dear life and all that kind of stuff. And he said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And I was like, oh, damn. Does that mean, what is that? What does that mean? But I've been working on that problem, quote unquote problem. I've been working on that equation ever since. So what does it mean to fight? What does it mean to continue fighting or to let go of the fighting? And for me, it means I've let go of the fighting with myself. It all has to do with the fighting that I do with myself, because I have fought for a number of things in this lifetime that I needed to fight for to get ahead, to do deals, to, put food on the table, right? Like all the stuff that is normal life stuff that sometimes you're fighting for. But my greatest adversary, and I'm going to give this up because it's one of my questions, but we'll talk about it. My greatest adversary is me. But my greatest ally is also me. So how do I reconcile that? And how do I reconcile that with my life? So I'll shut up and see what you think about that for a second.
I would say 100%. I'd say the same thing about myself. Honestly.
Yeah.
It's like, it's actually my book started out, believe it or not, being called Plan Me.
What,
It was
Plan B?
Plan Me. So
Oh,
it was,
Plan Me. Gotcha. Okay.
which is why I always say don't title a book before you write, because it was going to be like not Plan A, not Plan B, not Plan C, Plan Me. Stop living the life others expect of you and start living the one life meant for you. And it was going to be this whole hybrid, like here's my story, and then here's like the workbook section in it for you to take these takeaways and do your own work on your own journey for you. The book blew up to 190,000 words. As a nonfiction author, you can't publish 190,000 words. My coach at the time, who quit on me just before I published, who quit the company, told me I was a nobody, so to make my book smaller. It kept telling me to make it smaller and smaller and smaller after having never read a single line of my book. That's a totally different story. But anyways, through the evolution of it, I let a friend of mine who knows me very well, I'm a Leo, she's a Leo, we just get each other's souls. It was like she read the very first final manuscript I had, and she was just like, I don't like the title. I was like, okay, cool. I want honest opinion. Like, thank you, someone, for being real with me. I mean, like, this is not Plan Me. But anyways, to go back to what you say with the adversary and ally, like me and me, what the meaning of the book really is that I compare, towards the end of it, I compare all of us to a diamond. The diamond is the most indestructible natural matter that exists. Like, not even lava can melt a diamond. The only way a diamond can break is if there's too much built-up pressure inside. And so I say, just like we are just like a diamond, because it was like, no matter what the world could have thrown at me, no matter the noise, no matter the gunk, no matter the heaviness, no matter all that piled on top of me, no matter the storm of my own mind and everything that had caved in onto me, to the point that we got to the point where it was like, we literally had to grab our children and just dash out, or it was all going to crash on us. And I didn't know if there was any surviving that. But no matter any of this stuff life throws at us, at the end of it all, in this first part, nothing could have broken me unless I did that to myself. But I knew that even in the darkest of the darkness, I was still in there, and I was my own hope. And so I was able to rise up and get out of it without completely just breaking myself, because the world was never going to do that. So I think that's why I agree with you on both sides of the coin is me, because we're also our best friend and we're our worst enemy. But it's a matter of perspective and what we choose and how we choose to do that to ourselves,
Truly.
Sorry, I say a lot. I just realized that. I really need to stop saying I am real. It's just real. I'll call myself out. I say like a lot. I say a lot. It's okay.
No, it does start with me. It does end with me. And it's incumbent upon me, if I'm going to be my own advocate, to understand, how do I get better at this? How do I get better at this life thing? It's 100% on me. Nobody's given me a difficult life, and nobody's going to give me a great life. It's now I have stuff, we all have our stuff that we've dealt with as we go, and things that we've been handed, like, here's your box of things that suck. And we all get handed, different varying degrees of our box of things that suck. But then the question is, okay, what am I going to do about that? What am I going to do to move myself forward and move my life forward and move my soul forward, and, all that kind of thing. So,
well, and that's the truth. And I think that's where we're so similar. Like, I feel like our souls could have been cut from the same cloth. As we're not people to sit here and say, woe is me. Like, even in all my stories, I never played the victim in it. I owned up to my own part in it. I don't play the narcissistic martyr card. And I'm not that kind of a person. And it's like, yeah, I went through all this stuff. Do I wish I did it? I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. There are people who've commented that been like, this is uncomfortable to read. That's so much for someone to go through. It's like, but we all go through stuff. But I also wouldn't be here today, who I am, talking to you about this, and whoever's meant to listen to this, if I didn't go through that stuff, And
right.
it's like I said on my own podcast with my co-host the other day, she got on me. She gave me a real dose of tough love. She's on the side that you're on, because I was talking about the noise, and I was talking about how it's constantly so much of it. The world is a judgmental place, and it's why most people don't put books out into the world like we did. They're afraid to wear their heart on their sleeves. They're afraid to show up as themselves, because the world is just ready to pounced on you. And it takes a lot of strength to do and write the kind of stories that you and I wrote. And that's why I literally was throwing up the week before I published, because I was terrified to be so real. But then I had to get out of my own way. I had to get my ego out the door. But so when I said to her, I go, it's just constantly been so much. And this was more about, like, we were talking about our insecurities. And so I was talking about, since I was a child and my insecurities and people judging me, being an actress and a dancer and like all of the things you're constantly put on displayed and judged. And even up to now, like, as someone who's been through a lot physically with my kids and my miscarriages and everything. And I said to her, I was like, but it's just hard. She's like, you have to do away with the noise. And I was like, but it's just hard. It's just hard sometimes when it's so much. And she looked at me in the eyes and she goes, Nicole, life's not supposed to be easy. And it was just like, wow, I know that. I just needed someone just had to be like, I'm putting the hammer down. Everyone expects these hands out. Everyone expects to just be given things without doing the work. And her whole point was, it's not supposed to be easy. It's hard. And if these things are still getting to you, you haven't fought your demons hard enough right now. So you're still working through that in the middle part, right? You haven't gotten back to the light from the darkness because these things are still triggering you. And that's even something I've been working on. If you know the emotion code or body code. It's kind of in the realm of body keeps the score. So how we can carry these trapped traumas and emotions in our bodies that trigger us in places. And so much of it is not necessarily a physical thing we're dealing with, but how we're physically carrying trapped energy in our body. And I was working through a session a couple of weeks ago with an emotion code specialist. And I had said to her, because I'm like, I just don't want to carry it anymore. I don't want to feel the heaviness of it anymore. I want to take the backpack off. Like, I just want to be free. I don't want to fight so hard anymore. Like, I don't. I'm doing the work. I go, how do you know when you're healing and you've moved past it? And her response was just, when it no longer triggers you. It's as simple as that. When something that you've gone through, or someone, or words that are burned into your brains that someone said, or any of it, it no longer triggers you. You've healed from that. I don't think we're ever fully healed. Let's be real here. We all have so many layers of things, but that was one of those moments, kind of like what my co-host had said, that was just like, okay, wow, it's the truth. But again, I could have gone 20 more decades never understanding this or experienced this or living it. But and that's why I'm saying it's so hard to take this kind of a journey that someone like you has taken and someone like me is currently taking. But it really is, there's so much beauty in that as well.
And I mean, I always look at it like we're all just taking the journey, I've been doing it for a long time, but I look at life this way. I am in spiritual and emotional kindergarten until the day I die, and then we'll see what happens after that. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, because if I start thinking I know what the hell's going on, life shows me that I don't. So, there's an aspect of life, and I was told a long time ago that we have to remain teachable, and teachable is another word for humble. So be able to soak some of this stuff up and listen to what people say, and the fact that those things hit you, like what your co-host said, like, you're paying attention, you're doing all the right stuff. You know what I mean? It's just it's time, and it's work, and it's practice, and but you're doing all the wonderful things. I'm very happy for you. That it's like coming out of an old skin. Like, that's how I look at it, like an ill-fitting, tattered skin that I'm trying to eke my way out of, and so it sucks. There's places where it's attached, right?
It sucks, and it's I don't, not to use the word hard again, but it's when you are someone like that tries to stay humble, tries to constantly educate yourself. You're met with a lot of people who are not like that. And that challenge is almost harder than anything, because then here you are feeling like you're doing the work. My whole thing is, like, if we're here and we're breathing, we should constantly be growing and evolving, right? That's growth. That's what it's about. That's what the journey in life is about. And it's a self journey, but it's really challenging when you're met with people who are not doing that. It's kind of like, you ever heard of Humble the Poet? Do you know who he is? The author? He's amazing. And he has that book called Unlearn. And I think the basis of, I haven't read the whole thing. I read it in like little pieces and spurts. Cause as you know, too, I don't know if it's the same with you, but when you're writing a book, it's really hard to read other people's books. Like you're so deep in the mental space of writing.
Yeah.
But so I got it while I was writing my book. But his whole thing is like, when we're born, we're our purest selves. And then the journey becomes unlearning what people forced you to believe and learn along the way. Right. But you
Yeah.
have to get to that point to be like, no, we're going to unlearn all this stuff and move back towards the truth of ourself and our authenticity and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crucial, but it happens. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
when you're the person you were spoken with regarding the emotion code
Mm-hmm.
said, things, you won't respond like that anymore, or it won't trigger you anymore. And I agree 100%, but I also think sometimes, and this has happened a lot to me in my life, and over the, first many years of sort of embarking upon this journey, but there were things that I would look back and I'd say, oh, wait, I don't care about that anymore, or that doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
anymore, or now that makes sense, and it's kind of a hindsight thing, but it's like some of this stuff just drops off because you do the work. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I have to drill in on this, and then I have to drill in on this, and I have to drill in on this. Like, I don't have to control that entire process of healing for me. I
Mm-hmm.
need to do the work that's in front of me to be done, and the healing process takes place. Like that.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing. And that, once that realization is come to, it's an amazing place to sort of watch, because then you can become an observer of
Mm-hmm.
life and of self, as opposed to like, oh, I got to dig in and, and all that sort of, that friction sort of stuff, to take
Yeah.
friction away.
Yeah. And I think something important to add to all that too is like, even with the healing piece of it, and that's just a lot of the work I've been doing, and boxing has helped me with that too. And just really sitting and understanding it. A lot of people in the world will just look at physical health or have a stigma around mental health, the words of that. But really, if you're stuck in your body, you have to move your mind. If you're stuck in your mind, you have to move your body. If you want to heal your body, you also have to heal your mind and your heart and your soul. Like, if you want to heal your mind, you also have to heal your body. And a lot of people just look at like the physical exterior of a person, and sometimes people lose weight, right? They're like, oh, they're so healthy. That doesn't define health. If this, and that was something that like my boxing coach, when I first had sat with him, he said to me, because I was like, this of me, right? This exterior that people see. But he was like, this is never going to heal itself if you don't first heal this, your head, or this, your heart. And so you heal this part of it, the rest is just going to naturally do its work. But you can't expect one thing to heal and change if you're not willing to heal the whole self. And that's like the equation and the key that a lot of people don't always understand. And that goes back to what you're saying. It really is the whole thing.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's crucial. And it takes a while, because
Yeah.
there are, for me, there was a lot of low hanging fruit that I needed to deal with, and
Mhm.
however that came is how it showed up. And so, those aren't necessarily choices in the beginning, because you got to deal with this stuff that's like flashing red. Right.
Yep.
And then as you go on, you can get a little more, I guess, discerning on, okay, I am going to do this for my body. I'm going to do this for my heart. I'm going to do this for my mind, and I'm going to do this for my soul, and you start choosing those things, which is really cool. So we're
Yeah.
coming,
And
I,
oh
I hate
gosh.
to, oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and also with that though too, it's like anyone listening to this know that what is right for you in those things is not right for somebody else. So it's really discovering what you need for yourself for all of those aspects of your life,
100%.
and it's not gonna, you can't carbon copy what somebody else is doing. You're just
Not at
different
all.
people. Yeah.
Not at all. No,
I'm so sorry. Did we even get to your questions? I don't even know.
oh, no, we're fine. We're fine. This has been wonderful conversation.
Oh, good.
I just love the organic sort of flow nature of it. I think that's really cool. And I couldn't agree more. I have no idea where anybody is in their journey and what they need for any
Mhm.
aspect of their life at any given time, which is one of the reasons why I wrote a freaking book, because
Yeah.
here it is. Hopefully you can relate to something at some point. And if you read it 10 years from now, you'll probably be able to relate to something else, and that's just how the whole thing works. But so as we draw closer here, I just wanted to ask, and
Mhm.
based on your experience, if you would, Nicole. So if somebody's starting on the journey of healing, somebody's starting on, for me, it would probably be a sobriety type thing. But I also throw the caveat in there when I talk about this stuff. It doesn't have to be any of that stuff. It can be, hey, I'm dealing with fears. I'm dealing with things that are stopping me. I'm dealing with feeling like I'm stuck, whatever it is, somebody's embarking upon the journey.
Mhm.
What would your advice to those people or that person be as they get started?
First thing that comes to my mind, it seems so simple, but it was such a hard thing for me to do. No matter how much time it is, take time for yourself and write. Even if you have no intent to publish a book. I think that's why journaling is so powerful. And just for a long time, I was being depleted from, and my cup was draining, and no one was pouring back into it. And then I finally had to realize no one's going to give me the time. I have to take it for myself. And so just taking the time and just writing thoughts down, because just writing is energy, it's moving energy. So it's at least getting it out of trapped in here, out of your body into somewhere else. And when you do that, I swear sometimes your writing just takes over. Like I look at my book and I'm like, was someone writing for me? Did I really write that? And but it's just such a powerful thing, because it's also awakening the what you're keeping trapped inside and helping you work through that in a very minimal way. So it's not overwhelming. I mean, I think that's why it could be terrifying for someone to like go to therapy. It's just it can be overwhelming, right? But writing is so powerful. And I will say to anybody listening, because I think this was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I don't know if you could say the same thing. I mean, I've produced really hard TV shows before, but to finally create something and see something all the way through, and the way I did with this first book, was the absolute hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And that's the thing I'm most proud of. But I don't know if you were at AAL last year, Author Advantage Live, that event, but I know I'm not going to say the quote right, but there was someone in the chat that put a quote up, and it hit me so hard because I was through the editing stages. I could have pulled the book. It's still at that point and just been like, whatever, I'm too scared to do it. But the person, what they said was something along the lines of, you don't want the graveyard to be the most valuable real estate. Sorry, I don't know if you heard that. It was, you don't want the graveyard to be the most valuable real estate. So basically, if you have something to say, or if you have a story inside of you, don't let it die with you. And that really helped me work through the fears that I had to put this out into the world, because I knew that there was a greater purpose for this to exist, because there was people that needed to connect with these stories. And so if you can do it, Daryl, if I can do it, I just hope if there's any takeaway in this conversation, it's a reminder to people that if they have a passion inside of them, whatever that is that they want to do, that they can do it. Because if we could do what we did, people, y'all can do anything you want. If you just have to believe in yourself, and you just have to do it, because you don't want to look back and regret that you never did. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I could not agree more. My journey was a little different in the book, and I'll keep it short. But I said to my wife 20 years ago, as I was relating some story, and she's looking at me like, "Oh, you're not that dude anymore." I'm like, "No, I'm not." And I said, remind me to write a book someday. And and then it took me about 18 years after that to actually sit down and write a freaking book. But once I decided that I was going to write a book, it took me 3 months to write the first book. And then it took me another couple of months ish to write the second book, which is publishing in September. So it's amazing. And what you mentioned about the power of writing, and I could not agree more, because when I was an absolute disaster area in here and in here, one of the things that saved me many, many, many times was just writing and just getting it out and just taking it from here and putting it on paper. Powerful, powerful, powerful.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
it's not like you have to hold on to it forever. I mean, we don't need to be hoarders with our thoughts in our mind. And sometimes we do. We don't let them go. actually have this idea to like want to burn all my old journals as part of book two. It's like an absolute release of the past. But you know, so it's not like you have to keep it stored and trapped. You just write it and then have a ceremony with yourself and be like, okay, well, I'm letting go of those thoughts now. Goodbye. You don't control me anymore. You're not trapped in here anymore. Bye. And
I
then
did
bring the
that.
next ones in, you know. You did?
I torched them. I torched a lot of that old writing.
No.
Yeah. It's
That's
like,
so cool.
peace
I'm gonna have
out.
to ask
Yeah.
you about that. I'm literally gonna have to text you or email you about that because I'm like, how do I do that safely? That's my thought. How do I not get in
Yeah.
trouble for doing that? That's so cool. Was it so freeing? That had to be
It
really
was.
empowering.
It was. And
Yeah.
stuff that I wrote ended up in a bunch of different places over a bunch of different years. And so, you know, one time when we were moving, I like started picking stuff out. I'm like, oh my Lord, look at all this stuff, you know, all this
Yeah.
crazy stuff that came out of my head and out of my heart. I'm like, nobody can read this, you know? And so it was just nice to just say, you know what, I haven't thought about you in a long time. It's fine, but now that you're here, I'm just gonna get rid of
Yeah.
you.
Cleansing,
Goodbye.
freeing. You know, we
Yeah.
spring clean our houses, spring clean your mind and your heart
Yep.
and your soul.
Yep.
I could
100%.
talk to you for like 2 more hours, Joe. You're amazing.
I know. No, you as well, Nicole. Thank you. I appreciate so much appreciate the conversation. I have to say
Yeah.
that as I've watched your journey, you know, with the author thing unfold, I've found myself very proud of what you have done for yourself and your life and your kids and your husband. And it's a really cool thing because when you start healing yourself, you heal the entire world around you, you know, to the extent that you can contribute to that healing. So that's a wonderful thing.
Thank you. And I swear, the more work I do, the more Crosby's being vocal, and it gets me really emotional. And so I'll just keep doing all that hard work because they, like I said, they're our future, you know, so they deserve better.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
Thank you for that.
Just beautiful. So how do we find you? How do we find your book? I'll put all this stuff in the show notes. But I want to know how we find Nicole.
Main place to find the sources is Amazon. You can find the paperback hardcover ebook there. Have not done the audiobook yet. Still struggling to get that done because it's emotional. It is on Barnes & Noble online. There are some signed copies around the Colorado area, which is very cool. Website is www.nicoledanielle.life. The book is lifethroughlyrics.com, and my podcast is somewhereroad.com. But mostly on Instagram. You can find me there. That's kind of where if I'm going to go on socials, that's where I spend my time.
Cool. Yeah, that's wonderful. Again, we'll put that in the show notes. I'll make sure I get an email to you, Nicole, regarding that information. And I just want to say thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. It feels like a long time coming, you know, as we shared this journey together, but I'm sure we'll be in touch with podcasts and all that sort of thing going forward. So,
are you kidding me? I'm going to have you in mind if you will do so. So,
I'd love it. Oh, that would be so cool.
I want you to come take a walk and talk with us. So that would be amazing.
I'd love that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Anytime. Yeah. Just let me know. So thank you so much, Nicole, again, for everything. And thank you for putting your work into the world and your beautiful children into the world and, you know, making this place a better place. So I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate it. You having me. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.